the Eagle Badger podcast.
I will want us to very quickly just talk about the Financial Times article. I don't know if you read it, where they said that Nigeria is on the verge of becoming a failed state. And I think it wasn't an opinion piece per se, in that they tried to make an argument for why they were making that thing. They said Nigeria was stricken by poverty, by insecurity, by corruption, and by weakening institutions. And they mentioned the Kankara abduction as just one more example of the failure of the state to secure the nation. On the back of that, we saw a statement by Bishop Kukah, I think, and he's a very responsible elder statesperson.
True.
But he made a statement that was very troubling. He said, if anyone but a northerner was doing the things Buhari was doing, there would have been a coup a long time ago. We also recall Buratai, the chief of army staff, actually warned his generals to stay away from people who might be trying to shop for coup plotters or executors of a coup. And it worries me when you take all that swirling and all that's being said, and you put it against the backdrop of a 2005 U.S. intelligence conference, where one of the takeaways from that conference was a prediction that if Nigeria was to fail, it would fail within 15 years, and it would fail because a junior officer would execute a coup. And we are right at the cusp of that 15-year period as we draw to a close in 2020. And I want you to speak to it, because again, a couple of days ago, we saw circulating around social media a letter Buhari wrote in 1984, when he had just overthrown democratically elected President Shehu Shagari, justifying his coup. And he spoke about poverty, food inflation, insecurity, and corruption. And it's funny because, if you look at the indices in 1984 and compare them with 2020, in 1984, we had a recession. We're currently in a recession. Inflation was double digits, almost touching 20% in 1984 and in 1983. It's the same thing now. Insecurity I don't think has ever been this high. We are one of the most insecure nations on earth. And we continue to climb the charts on corruption, the Transparency International's corruption index. So I mean, a devil could argue that if you needed to hit a certain level to justify a coup, we seem to have hit those levels or even surpassed it now. And I think that's my concern. Not because I want a coup. I think democracies are the best routes to deliver progress to any society, but almost as a warning that like if you know that these are the indicators of a failed state, and if you know that people will be tempted to step in when the state starts falling, you almost should keep it at the back of your hand that you need to step forward and correct the downward spiral the country currently is. Also, interestingly, before I hand over to you, one of the main reasons Buhari mentioned for his 1983 coup was unsustainable domestic and foreign debt. currently under Buhari, we have reached levels where for almost every naira Nigeria earns, 90 kobo goes to service debt. So again, 1984 and that dismal situation appears to be mirrored in 2020. So I don't know what thoughts you have around this talk of a failed state or a failing state, and concerns or fears of a coup, and where you stand on that matter.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think first, let me start from the concern over a coup, which is a serious issue, and I think that the man who made this statement is not a flippant talker. He's a very decent man in Nigeria, well known, vast. Um, Let me say this: that I'm not going to blame Father Kukah for actually revealing the truth, about our nation. The president is not there in terms of, administering the nation and presiding over the affairs of this country. What we have are influence peddlers milling around the corridors in power. So all these are open to Nigerians, especially discerning Nigerians, and there is no way anything they can disguise, the government of the day for people not to actually see the chicanery. So basically, I believe that what Father Kuka said should be a greater reawakening for them to know that the game is, coming to an end. So one thing again is that it's important that we also ask the Buhari administration to be very, very truthful and sincere in dealing with some of these, challenges facing us as a nation. So I believe that Father Kuka spoke from a position of pain. He spoke from a position of serious challenge, because when you looked at what he said, these are very weighty statements. However, he said it within the context of the fact that, bear in mind, like I said, or like you rightly pointed out in your, introduction to this, that, the current president was also a military coup plot. And as we speak, the president has never repudiated, everything that happened that period, meaning that he wanted to take the credit, for everything. Therefore, you must also take the blame. You can't, take one without, the other. So basically, what we've seen is that we know that they've sent out people to attack Father Kuka, but that cannot in a way, stop, the truth from being, revealed. And like we said, look at the Financial Times article. It's so obvious, so glaring that Nigeria is more or less headed for the abyss. And the only one of the things that we can do is to continue to talk. Are not actually planning a coup, and we are not asking, for a coup. We believe that look, we can get this problem sorted. We must just continue to push as a people, to solve our problems. We have a government that is just not there, and hopefully, it should also be our preoccupation as we move closer to election day. That look, everything that we have ignored here must be on the ballot, for the whoever is going to be the president to decide. So because we have to just get involved, we have to just throw our heart into it. So I believe that we can also help the system from our own little. Falakuka made the right statement. No matter how difficult and painful for the government, I think the most important thing for the government to do is to actually look at this concern and actually address them.
So I hear you and I agree completely. Again, I echo my earlier expressed position and yours that we believe a democracy and the ballot are the best way to steer and change the affairs of government, in
Absolutely.
in any progressive society. But but the problem with the ballot, and we've seen it time and time again, is that it's only as, I think, as valid as your judiciary is incorruptible. So we recall the Imo situation where a governorship candidate that came forth in the election ended up becoming the governor of the state. We have seen electoral petitions that have been curious, not for the elections themselves, but just for the judgments that came out from the judiciary.
Yeah.
Most recently, we've seen the curious situation where Goodluck Jonathan is being courted, appears to be being courted by the APC as their candidate for 2023. Meanwhile, one of his officials, Olisa Metu, languishes in jail for carrying out the instructions of his president. Olisa Metu was convicted by a Justice Agbang and was recently set free by the appeal court, who was unhappy with the bias shown by Justice Abang. He's a character that interests us politically, just because of his involvement in political judgments, especially judgments against the PDP. And it got to the point where if you heard that your case, the judge on your case was Justice Abang, you had lost the case. That was the feeling at the time. And I don't think the judiciary can, in the Financial Times article spoke about weak institutions, so I don't think the judiciary, unless it pulls its weight, unless it stands up, I think a falling judiciary is almost a precondition to a failed nation. Imagine, if you will, the nation rests on these three tripods of the executive, the judiciary, and the National Assembly. And we have, for want of a better word, a National Assembly that is toothless, is unable to punish the president for disrespecting it. We have a judiciary that appears to be cowed. And when you have these weakened institutions, and more importantly, I think the perception that these institutions have been weakened and corrupted, it then leads people to seek and search for other means of representation and other channels of justice.
The only thing I would like to just say is probably to also, for you to shed more light on how you think that the government should, perceive the letter written by Father Kukah. And I know that we've talked about it, but I just want to get that, probably maybe we're on the same page.
Well, it was a damning letter. Let's not sugarcoat it. It wasn't a nice letter. It wasn't, and I think I've read Father Kukah, and I've seen him write a lot of constructive letters to government. This wasn't in that vein. This was an indictment almost, he appeared to, maybe because of frustration, he appeared to have given up on the government and appeared to be warning of an inevitable end unless they change their ways, almost like prophets of old who would come to speak it to a king and tell them hard truths of an impending doom or disaster unless they sought the face of God. But the letter did seem to be that type of doomsday prophetic letter. And how I don't think, he gave any channel, he left any channels of communication open with that letter. And I expect them to respond as aggressively as they have. But I think, or I hope that, away from the cameras and away from the press, you have cooler and calmer heads within government who are able to, say, hang on, guys, Bishop Kukah is right. We do need to sit up and fix up. I know we have characters like Professor Simbajo in government. I know he is a reasonable person. I know we have people like Atedo Peterside who actually, while not in government, also have open channels of communication to government. So they aren't surrounded by incompetent people. It's whether they are listening to the advice I know they will be receiving that I think will determine Nigeria's eventual outcome.